Rumi, Whirling Dervish, written and illustrated by Demi, read by Nukdaynazar. The whole world celebrated the 800th anniversary of Jalaluddin Rumi's birth in 2007, the year of Rumi, as declared by the United Nations. Considered by many to be the greatest mystical poet who ever lived, Rumi was a simple man. He was a preacher in a small mosque in a corner of Turkey, where he once met a very special teacher. The teacher opened up Rumi's creative energies and inspired him with such a love of God and respect for Prophet Muhammad that Rumi's poetry has been unmatched for more than 800 years. The result of his life is contained in 3 phrases. I was ripe, I ripened, I was consumed. Rumi lived in a part of the world that is now Turkey. It was called Asia Minor in English, but Rum by Seljuk Turks. Rumi therefore became known as the man from Rum. Rumi's poetry speaks to the heart of the people in many lands and people of different faiths, because he saw the love of God in everyone and everything. He wrote, "The practice of lovers is separate from all religions, because the religion and nation of lovers is God." Rumi believed that love is the root of all religions. God is the friend and beloved of all humankind. Dr. Lale Bakhtiyar, PhD, translator of the Sublime Quran and author of Sufi Expressions of the Mystic Quest. A long time ago, on September 30, 1207, a boy was born in the city of Balkh in Afghanistan. His parents named him Jalaluddin, Splendor of the Faith. His first teacher was his father. He taught Jalaluddin the Quran, the sacred book of Islam, and also the life of Prophet Muhammad, whom the Quran calls the mercy to humanity. In addition, his father taught him Islamic law, science, and math. Jalaluddin loved learning new things and having his father as his teacher. Then one day, when the boy was 12, news came that a terrible warrior, Genghis Khan, and his Mongol army were conquering their homeland. Jalaluddin's father gathered his family and friends into a huge caravan and escaped from Afghanistan. They traveled through Iran, Egypt, Syria, Arabia, and finally settled in Turkey. Jalaluddin was now 18 and felt it was time to marry. He met a girl from his hometown who had been traveling with his family's caravan. Their wedding was celebrated with great joy, and soon 2 sons were born, Sultan Valad and Alauddin. Jalaluddin and his family settled in Konya, the capital of Seljuk, Turkey. Every day, Jalaluddin would listen to his father's stories and hear him read from the Quran. Jalaluddin taught his own sons as he had been taught. 5 times a day, before sunrise afternoon, in the late afternoon, after sunset, and at night. The family prayed. Soon, Jalaluddin was teaching many students. One day, a spiritual man named Sayyid Burhan came to visit Jalaluddin. He had lived as a hermit in the mountains. But when he met Jalaluddin, he was so impressed that he stayed in Konya and taught him everything he knew. Although Jalaluddin learned much about the spiritual world, he felt he hadn't experienced it for himself. Jalaluddin remembered that he had spent his youth traveling and meeting great teachers in Iran, and that he had made a pilgrimage with his family to Mecca. He recalled meeting a spiritual teacher who had predicted that one day Jalaluddin would come to know the Spirit of God. He was now 37 years old. He had become a famous religious scholar and teacher, devout and respectable. But he still hadn't experienced the Spirit of God within himself. Jalaluddin had book knowledge about, but he felt empty inside. He had almost given up hope for ever meeting a teacher who could show him the way. Then on November 29, 1244, he met Shamsuddin, son of the faith, who was from the city of Tabriz in northwestern Iran. Shams, a learned man with great intuition and wisdom, had traveled through many lands looking for a student who would be inspired by his teachings. Shams taught Jalaluddin for 3 years. He was the best teacher anyone could ever have wished for. He said to listen for the sound of heaven, emptying the mind of all thoughts, to hear the sacred sound of God. As Jalaluddin said later, it was the time before dawn. In the sky rose a shining moon. It drew my soul from its human frame into the sphere of spirits. Then Shams disappeared. During those 3 years, Jalaluddin was reborn as Mevlana Rumi, a spiritual teacher in his own right. Just as the spider weaves its web from within itself, Rumi began to recite poetry in Persian. Rumi had been a good preacher, but his creativity was now blossoming. He had never created poetry, and before meeting Shams, he hadn't thought much about it. But after his spirit had been awakened, he began to recite more than 50,000 rhymed couplets. He felt like he was no longer in control. Instead, his creative spirit was in charge. Rumi was able to describe angels because he said he had experienced their world. He recited, "Whether they be like the new moon, or the moon of 7 days old, or the full moon, every angel has its rank in terms of light and spiritual degree. Every angel, according to its degree, has portion of radiance, and 3 or 4 pairs of luminous wings. Just as the wings of our mind, amongst which there is a great difference in quality, the friend of every human being in good and evil is that angel whose dignity is like his or hers. The stars shine for the sake of guidance, for the one who cannot bear the light of the moon. One of the Rumi's most famous poems, the Mathnawi, began with the following lines from The Lament of the Reed. Listen to this reed forlorn, breathing ever since it was torn. From its rushy bed, a strain of impassionate love and pain. The secret of my songs, though near, none can see and none can hear. Oh, for a friend to know the sign and mingle all his or her soul with mine. It's the flame of love that has fired me. It's the wine of love that has inspired me. Would you learn how lovers bleed? Listen, listen to the reed. In another poem he recited, Why are you envious of this all-generous sea? These joyous waters, why to each would you deny? Shall fishes treasure up the waters in a cup? To whom will the ocean wide never be denied? It was through mystical poetry that Rumi told the following story about Solomon. When the tent pavilion was pitched, the birds came to bow down to Solomon. They found him speaking the same language of feeling in which hearts speak to hearts. To speak the same tongue is family and kindship. When we are with someone to whom we cannot confide our secrets, we are like prisoners in chain. Many, an Indian and Turk, speak the same tongue, and many a pair of Turks are as strangers to each other. The tongue of mutual understanding is different. To be one in heart is better than to be in one tongue. Rumi told the story of Moses when Moses was on a journey and he lost the fish he was planning to eat for breakfast. He retraced his steps and found that the fish had jumped into a flowing stream. He confronted the fish and suddenly a spiritual teacher named Khidr appeared. Just as Shams had awakened the creative spirit in Rumi, so Khidr tried to awaken it in Moses. Rumi spoke of Jesus as the Messiah, known by many as great teacher who had the ability to heal the sick and revive the dead. Rumi said, Each of us is a Messiah in a world of people. In our hands is a medicine for every pain. Still thinking about Shams, hoping he would return, Rumi began to whirl and circle, turning round and round, a pillar while his students watched. Then one day, while wandering in the marketplace, Rumi heard the sound of men beating gold. To Rumi's ears, the sound became, God is greater, God is greater. Rumi circled and circled, round and round he went, without stopping, for 36 hours, until he fell to the ground. Then he began reciting his famous Diwani Shamsi Tabrizi in honor of his beloved teacher. Rumi had felt so close to God. While turning that, he began teaching the circling dance to his students. They sang, We came whirling out of the nothingness, scattering stars like dust. The stars made a circle, and in the middle we danced. Those who performed the dance became known as whirling dervishes. Rumi's verses also turned and turned. His poems were about love and mercy as the purpose of the universe. Through his poetry, he told stories and fables and included commentary on Quranic verses. It is even said that his Mathnawi is the Arabic Quran in the Persian language. Whirling dervishes danced to his words, spinning out their love for God. Rumi recited his poems only a few at a time. Students wrote down his words. In time, Husamuddin Chelebi became his favorite student and continued to write down the poems. There are 25,000 rhymed couplets in the Mathnawi and 40,000 poems in the Divani Shamsi Tabrizi. Rumi also wrote a prose work called Fihi Ma Fihi, known in English as the Discourses or Signs of the Unseen. Rumi became famous for his teaching stories about God. Here's one of them. Nobody. A man knocked on the door. "Who is there?" asked God. "Me," replied the man. "Go away then," said God. The man left and wandered in the arid desert until he realized his mistake. Then he returned to the door and knocked again. "Who is there?" asked God. "You," replied the man. "Then come in," said God. "There is no room for two here." Rumi wanted children to find God everywhere in everything. He recited, "God has hidden himself in the sea and revealed the form. He has hidden himself in the wind and revealed the dust." At the age of 66, Rumi became very ill. He died on the night of December 17, 1273. As he lay dying, he told his students that this was his wedding night, since he was finally going to join his beloved. Rumi passed into union with God. That evening, the Konya sky shone a brilliant red. Rumi had earlier written a poem about death. "On the day I die, when I'm being carried toward the grave, do not weep. Do not say, 'He's gone, he's gone.' Death has nothing to do with going away. The sun sets and the moon sets, but they are not gone. Death is a coming together." His tombstone says, "When we are dead, seek not our tomb in the earth, but find us in the hearts of men." Today, Mevlana Rumi is considered one of the most revered mystical poets who ever lived. His inspired verses and his whirling dervishes show that his love of God turns forever. After Mevlana Rumi's union with God, his scribe Husamuddin Chelebi carried on his work. Later, Rumi's son Sultan Valad became a teacher like his father. Sultan Valad organized the whirling dervishes and perfected the dance. He made the color of the inside robes white. He wrote down his father's teachings and created the Mevlana Mausoleum, which has a green dome known in Turkish as Yeşil Türbe, There, whirling dervishes continue to worship and dance to this day. About whirling dervishes. When whirling dervishes turn in circles, they are in a state of prayer. As their bodies spin, they believe that there is a still point in the center of their being that allows the heavens and the whole universe to join in the dance. They turn in a way that will make the light of God descend to the earth. They believe that divine light comes through the right hand when it's turned upward. The left hand brings the light down into the world. They have faith that their turning will bring peace and love into the world. Before the dance begins, the dervishes slowly walk around the floor 3 times in a circle. Each time they kiss their teacher's hands to show love and respect for their master. Then suddenly, they throw off their black robes as if they are releasing the things on earth that have kept them from God. Underneath their cloaks are dazzling white grounds which stand for divine light. When they spin around, it's like seeing atoms dancing around the sun. It's a heavenly dance, the dance of eternity. God's Spirit turning in us, making the universe turn. Head unaware of feet and feet head. Neither cares, they always keep turning. Demi was born in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and now lives in the mountains of Carnation, Washington. She studied art at the Instituto Allende in Guanajuato, Mexico, with sister Corita at the Immaculate Heart College in Los Angeles, at the MS University in Baroda, India, while on a Fulbright scholarship, and at the China Institute for Arts in New York City. Demi is the author and illustrator of more than 100 children's books, including picture book biographies of Marco Polo, Gandhi, Jesus, Buddha, and Dalai Lama. Her work has received numerous awards and accolades, among them the Christopher Award, which recognizes individuals whose work makes a positive difference in the world, and the Middle East Book Award. Her titles have been designated notable children's books by the American Library Association, New York Times Best Illustrated Books, Notable Books for a Global Society, and American Bookseller Pick of the List book.